Hello, ladies and gentlemen. This is Grizzly from Lexington, Kentucky, from coast to coast and around the world. How's everybody doing this evening? We have a special guest tonight. Very interesting. Larry Beans Baxter. How you doing tonight, sir?
Good. Living the dream. Thanks for having me on.
It's all my honor. So why don't you tell me a little bit about yourself?
Well, I was born in Kentucky. I was actually born in Muhlenberg County, or I grew up in Muhlenberg County, not too far from Lexington, I guess. And I joined the military when I was 21, and I said, I don't care where the military sends me as long as it's nowhere cold, and straight to Alaska I went.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
Wow.
But it worked out. I've been here ever since. So, I met an Alaskan girl, married an Alaskan girl, and, I just, I don't have any plans on leaving. So, so I spent the last 20 years between military and law enforcement service. And now, I've retired and I look for Bigfoot.
Especially up there where you're at, that's supposed to be a hot spot.
Yeah, well, it's such a big area. That's one thing about Alaska that a lot of people don't it's hard for them to comprehend is just how big it is. I mean, it's it's just look at the comparative maps between Alaska and the Little 48, and it's just massive. And there's so much room up here that's uninhabited and just so remote that I mean there could be just about anything up here, and I could believe that it would be unknown that we hadn't just stumbled across it yet, even larger animals. So it's a special place, man. I think everybody should try and get up here at least once and visit it.
Well, since you mentioned that you live in Alaska, so the first thing comes to mind is the Alaska Triangle. What was it, last year or year before? 60,000 plus people missing. Where I live, it's not too far from the Appalachian Trail. So then we got the state parks, the national parks, and the forestries, Yosemite, Yellowstone, and of course it's coming 411. So what do you think about all that?
Well, I think I'm pretty grounded in a lot of my research and a lot of my theories. I think that a lot of especially stuff that just happens up here in Alaska, a lot of the missing people, I think a majority of them are just people that are not prepared. They're not prepared for the weather. They're not prepared for the environment. I think there is a small percentage of those cases that, I mean, just can't be explained. And there's, I don't know. I don't really have a theory on a lot of them. I think it's not all one thing that causes them. I think it's a combination of things. I think some of them are probably serial killers. Some of them are probably,
So I'll give you 10% off for that. So we're at 90%.
Yeah. Some of them are serial killers. Some of them are, known animal attacks. Some of them are
10%.
Yeah. Like I said, some of them are just, operator error, people that aren't familiar with outdoors.
Off that.
Yeah. And some of them are people that don't, I would say this is even a smaller percentage. This is less than 10%. Some of them are people that don't want to be found and disappear on purpose.
Okay. 5.
Some of them are suicides. And then, there's some of them that just,
10.
and some of them are just baffling and unexplained. And who knows?
That's the percentage that I don't understand.
Yeah.
And we have people on the Appalachian Trail that are jogging, in a jog or whatever 5K, 10K, whatever they call it. And they're all in a group, and the lady up first turns the corner, then everybody else turns the corner, and she's gone. And they never find clothes, camping gear, hunter's gear, which includes rifles and firearms, tents, or none of that stuff. You know. Now, I always say follow the money, and that will come into play here shortly. But think about that. And you living in Alaska, does that ever bother you at all? Or
Yeah, well, there's a case that happened a few years ago. So there's a town called Seward where they have the Mount Marathon race every 4th of July, and hundreds of people participate. And they run up the mountain and they run down the mountain, and it's a timed event. And they have prizes, and it's a big deal when they have a women's section and a men's section, and whoever wins first, it's a big deal. And a few years ago, they had a gentleman that ran in it. He was a little bit older. I don't remember his age. I don't have the case directly in front of me, but they saw him running up the hill or the mountain, and they saw him at one of the checkpoints, and it had taken him a while. He was a slow runner, I guess. And they had, he said, well, I'm just going to go up and, finish the race. I'm going to hit the last checkpoint here, turn around. And they'd already started tearing down the checkpoints, and, everybody's going home. The winners have already, come and gone. I think the fastest male runner did it in I think it was under a half hour or something like that.
Oh, wow.
And so, end of the race, everybody's finishing up, and this guy's family's like, all right, where is he? And that launched into I remember when it happened. I remember listening to the state trooper traffic on the radio about how they were starting the search and rescue operations, and they had a helicopter with thermal flying up and looking for him, and never found a trace, not a shoe, nothing. And I have a hard time explaining that. I mean, he was going up a mountain, so it's not impossible that he didn't fall off the mountain, but you think they would have found something.
Right. Absolutely.
And that is a baffling case.
But when you think about that, you live there. Does it ever come across your mind, like, what if?
Not really. I mean, I mean, it does, but not to the point where it stops me from doing something. I think David Paulides said, if you can, carry a firearm, absolutely carry a personal locator beacon, and, just know the terrain you're going in. And I always have a firearm and a inReach beacon on me. So, I try and be as prepared as I can be. But I mean, if it's going to happen, it's going to happen. Hopefully whatever it is, I put up a good fight, but you can't live in fear. I mean, it's good to be prepared, but you can't just set inside scared all the time, afraid that if I walk out my door, I'm going to disappear. You just got to get out and live your life and do what you want to do. Yeah,
but saying that and living there, and how long you been up there?
Oh, gee, I don't know, since like 2001, so 20-some years now, I think.
Okay, so you got some time up there, but like you said, you still wonder what if. What do you think causes that? I mean, we went over the list that you provided that you thought of, but what do you think really happens?
I don't know. If I knew, I would have my own series of books, I guess. But I don't know. I mean, I have like I said, I named most of my theories as far as natural phenomenon goes. As far as like supernatural, or to go into a little bit more into the woo, I guess. There's always the predatory Bigfoot, maybe some kind of abduction scenario, either that be aliens or fae or something like that. I mean, I just don't know. I don't think there's enough data to really hone in on one theory.
Well, and that's right. In this community, nobody's an expert. it's all theories. It's all sitting there thinking of opinions of everybody's of how people actually disappear. And, it's interesting to hear how everybody answers that question because they all answer it similarly, like you do. Uh, you know, Me being an investigator or a reporter, hearing it for people that has ground or boots on the ground, uh, it's real interesting to understand what you all think.
Yeah.
It really is.
Yeah.
So you up there doing Sasquatching, or what do they call it up there in Alaska?
Just squatching, Bigfooting.
Watching Bigfoot.
Yeah.
Okay. But I mean, have you had any luck or experience?
Well, I'm probably going to be the most skeptical person you've ever had on your podcast. um, I'm pretty, like I said, I'm pretty grounded with things. I try not to, one of my mantra when I'm out in the field, not everything is Bigfoot. Um, I don't know how many times I've heard something or saw something and it turned out, okay, slow down. Let's think about this. What is it? And then you can find uh, a reasonable explanation for it. There are things that happen and sounds and sightings and things that happen that I can't explain. And those are the ones that I'm out there for. That's the stuff that I'm like, okay, that's what I want to figure out what it is the stuff that I can't look at analytically and be like, oh, well, okay, I thought it was this, but it turns out it's this kind of bird or it's that kind of bird, um, or what have you. Um, I like to get in there and find things that just baffle me. I like to be challenged, I guess is what I'm trying to say. And
Well,
you know,
Bo agrees with you. He says, I already love the guest.
yeah,
So
yeah, like,
Bo says the same thing.
yeah. And like I said, I'll probably be the most skeptical person you've had on this podcast. That being said, like you were saying earlier, it's all theory. Maybe it is robot aliens from the future or something, but we got to prove it. I'm not, I have a hard time with people that come up to me and go, the reason you can't find Bigfoot is because he's an interdimensional being. Maybe he is, but I got to see one go into a portal before that's my go-to explanation.
And that's the best way to look at things
Yeah.
is being the way you are, because that's the common practice I've seen so far. Is every time somebody walks in the woods, oh my gosh, this is Bigfoot. Bigfoot made this and the tree structures and all that. But, don't forget we have hunters that make tree blinds out of wood and they stack them up. And turkey hunting, do the same thing for a blind.
Yeah.
So,
I found structures in the woods that I am, positive. I didn't see a person make it, but I'm positive a person made it. And I found things in the woods that I'm positive people didn't make. Big trees that I'm a big old boy. Trees that I would have problems moving around, uprooted, move somewhere else and leaned up against another tree or something like that. That's a little bit harder to explain.
yeah, it is. It really is. And so, what do you think your theory is on Bigfoot, and what do they do?
Well, this is my theory. I gotta put out this disclaimer. I don't know anything about Bigfoot. I'm not an expert. It's all theories and speculation. Personally, as of right now, which it could change, theory on Bigfoot is that it is a natural animal, but it is a very, very skilled natural animal. I mean, we have animals that can, camouflage themselves incredibly well. And we have animals that just have lived on the outskirts of our knowledge for a long time and just were, like pandas, gorillas, those are all relatively recently discovered, in the grand scheme of things as far as our existence. And well, I mean, the natives and stuff, they've known about them for years, but as far as like our civilization has just,
Right.
discovered them relatively recently. And I think that it's probably something like that. It's just for whatever reason, it has evolved to avoid us. Um, and it's just really good at what it does. I think it's probably some type of ambush predator. It probably eats, it's, probably omnivore. And, but it does, it may attack a target of opportunity. And I think they're just really, really good at hiding from us. I'm not a big believer in the conspiracy thing, the Bigfoot cover up. I've worked in the government pretty much my entire adult life. I've never, the government does have secrets and stuff like that, but I've just never ran into anything that made me think that Bigfoot was being covered up. Um, one of my favorite quotes is, and I can't remember who said it, but it's always stuck with me when it comes to conspiracies. Is never explain with malice that which can be explained through ignorance.
That's true.
And I think a lot of it is just, most of the people that are higher up in the government that I've talked to about it are just, it's, oh, that's not real. It's dismissed. They're ignorant to the subject. They don't look at it. They don't give a critical eye to it. It's just not a thing. We're not even going to consider it. But on the other hand, like you were saying about money, following the money, I do think there's a good chance there's probably some kind of conspiracy to keep it quiet amongst the logging industry. People don't want to lose their jobs, their livelihood. Money's a great motivator for stuff like that.
Yeah.
I don't really.
When they found the spotted owl.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh my
Yeah.
gosh. I mean, it caused havoc in the lumber industry.
And I think that probably the government, I don't think they really care one way or the other whether Bigfoot exists. But anybody that would profit or lose profit from it, I think they would have, I mean, it's just like a crime, mean motive and opportunity. Money's a big motivator. There's not going to be anybody that makes their bread and butter in the logging industry that's, running to the newspaper with proof of Bigfoot, because they're going to be out of a job soon.
That's true. And the way I look at things from hearsay, I cannot prove it, but Mount St. Helens, people reported seeing helicopters with cargo nets carrying them out that were dead. Thinking about stuff like that, I do think the government knows about them. I do think the government has the DNA. I think they don't want us to know about it because of the forest and some other things with the national parks and national forest and state parks and federal and all that. And, that's a $1 billion industry right there for the government. And, 1999, allegedly, there was a fire out west in America, and 2 firefighters were putting out fires, and they come across a large, hairy man with 3/4 of the body burned, and they were helping it, patching it together or whatever, getting it all ready to get it out of there. And then, the government shows up, picks it up, whatever, with other men, and tells the firemen that, hey, number one, you were not here. Number two, you did not see this. And 3, you will never speak of it, and then they haul away the body. Now, all that's hearsay because it's never been reported actually in paper that I think of. I think it was on a TV show once, I believe, but I don't know if it's ever been printed in a magazine or, like local news or something like that. Because, it's scientists thinks a lot of things don't exist. They tell us things that exist that goes bump in the night. They tell us things that we hear we're not supposed to be heard, and we're seeing things out there, whatever it is, Bigfoot, Dogman, other types of cryptids and so forth, that we're told that does not exist, but we have people with pictures and videos and all these thousands of people coming forward now with their encounters. How do we explain that?
Yeah. Well, let me talk about the Bigfoot gets carted away from the government for a second, because I always hear like the government tracks these things. If they can track an animal that lives in the wood, why is there a FBI top 10 most wanted list? Like, if they can track these things that live out in the middle of nowhere in the woods, how do they not know where some people are? I don't know.
Okay.
It doesn't make a lot of sense to me. Not that, I'm not saying maybe there is a government conspiracy to keep their existence quiet, but I don't think it's to the point where they're if one gets hit by a logging truck, a black helicopter lands in the middle of the road and they scoop it up. I just don't think they have that. A lot of people give the government a lot of attributes and powers that they don't necessarily possess. The government doesn't know where, like I've got a bear that lives in my backyard. I'm pretty sure that the government doesn't know where he is right now at any given time. So, I don't know. It just seems I think it's more comforting to believe that somebody's in charge rather than nobody's in charge. I think it's just more comforting for people to think like, oh, well, it's like that because the government wants it that way, or the boogeyman wants it that way. There's a quote from Neil Gaiman that no, I'm sorry, the guy that wrote Watchmen, Alan Moore. That it's more comforting to believe in conspiracies because it's scary to think that the world's rudderless, and I think that I think that they may be aware of them, but I don't think they have the ability to track them, to hunt them down, and know when one flat. They're like, oh, there's not somebody sitting at a monitor going, oh, one just flatlined in Oregon, get the helicopter spun up, that's a little bit too far-fetched for me.
Well, people communicate a lot. Word gets out easy. People are notified of what happened and they call the local authorities. And I have an example. I interviewed a guy last week. His dad was a deputy sheriff in a town. I'm not going to say which one or state. And they were going to the store, and across the radio, his partner and somebody else that's on the sheriff's department actually hit a Bigfoot in the squad car. So when he shows up, he's looking at the car, and it looked like it hit a telephone pole, but it's out in the middle of the road, no trees. And there's blood and there's fur, or hair, all over the front end. It's buckled. The car's totaled. So everybody shows up. Then you got the DNR or the Fish and Wildlife people show up and tell this guy, hey, go back to doing what you're doing. You don't need to be here. And they try to talk to the driver, and the driver's really reluctant to say what happened. But, it comes out, and they say that, look, we're going to put down that you had a wreck, and we're going to leave it at that. You're not going to speak of anything else. So, you hear stuff like that, just makes you wonder, and like I said, it's all a theory. You really don't. And we're a little bit behind on comments here. Bo says if a structure is found, there would have to be DNA of some sort associated with building it, and I agree. And next one, hey, hello there, how you doing? And while in high school oh, was in high school at the time of Mount St. Helens. So, Bo says, excellent point. You are making some good points. And good point. The urban jungle may be easier to hide away than the open woods. And we can use deer as the prime example. How many times you've been out there hunting deer or elk, and all of a sudden one walks in front of you, and you didn't see it come to you. They're so well blended with nature and stuff. So when you go out and you investigate, what are you seeing? What are you finding, with boots on the ground in Alaska?
Well, we get vocalizations up here. We get wood knocks. We get tracks, footprints. I mean, just a lot of the stuff that you see in a lot of the other states that are associated with Bigfoot sightings and phenomena. I wanted to address the structure and the DNA comment. I mean, I agree with you. That's true. But at the same time, when you're dealing with a tree that's like 20 feet tall, that's been picked up and moved over somewhere, where do you swab it? Where did the Bigfoot touch it?
Yeah, I mean, you gotta. I mean, you're one. I picked you for a reason to be on the show, and this is why. I did my research on you. I followed some of the things that you posted. I'm very picky who comes on the show. I usually have people that have boots on the ground and some years underneath the belt, and I also have new people starting out, and then I have the regular civilians that just have these encounters and they just want to talk about it. So it's really interesting the points you're making. Speaking of DNA, are you aware about the eDNA?
Yes, and I've been wanting to incorporate that, but it's pretty cost prohibitive at this point. I haven't found a unit that I could get for an affordable price that I could take out in the
Right.
field with me. And I'm a little skeptical of DNA in that I think that we've probably had some DNA collected and sent off, and it probably, because it's not a known animal, and they're probably looking at it and be like, well, this is a contaminated sample, or it comes back, like, well, there's some human in there, so somebody must have touched it or something. I think that there probably has been some DNA collected. We just don't have the knowledge to know what we're looking at.
Well, and here comes another speculation or assumption, and when you assume, it usually stands for make an ass out of you and me, right? So I'll give you credit for that. But when eDNA, for people that don't know, I call it looks like a motorcycle filter, gas filter. And they can go to any creek, river, stream, pond, lake, anything that contains water, and they can siphon water out. Usually, they do it for 45 seconds, I believe, and they can tell you that any creature that's lived there, walked through there, touched the water, urinated in there, they can tell everything that's in that area, by this eDNA. And also taking samples of the soil and other stuff and where the footprints are. And it's always 98% human and 2% unknown. And we hear that a lot, or we hear it's unconclusive. Well, to me, that's proof that Sasquatch does exist, because if they can't match that other percentage to nothing that's on Earth in their database, how do you explain that?
Yeah. Well, so I've sent used cigarette butts to the crime lab and got back insufficient amount for analysis. I mean, the guy had it in his mouth. I know he did. It's a smoked cigarette. I'm not and I'm not a forensic scientist. I don't, I can't sit here and tell you how DNA works and how it's found, or, how the analysis works. But just knowing that, I have found cigarette butts at a crime scene, sent them to the crime lab, and they've come back. Sorry. It doesn't surprise me that when you're out in nature, in the wild, in an uncontrolled environment, it's a little hard to pull in DNA for an animal that nobody knows exists.
Well, you got a good point there. But the argument stands that when it comes back all these times with, hair that they cannot find, it matches a primate or similar to a primate, but they cannot find anything in the DNA dictionary to match it to, what else are you to, once again, here comes the word, assume? And ladies and gentlemen, here he comes. They get mad when I bring this up, but we're going to talk about religion. People that lived among the giants. Look at all the skeletons that were found that were 8, 9, 10, 11 foot tall. They used to display them back in the 1800s and early 1900s, and they would stand next to them. And you talk about a wow factor. And they all disappeared, all the skeletons. There was a show, two brothers or two cousins that were masonry people, started their own show, looking for giants. And there was, I think, 4 or 5 episodes, and all of a sudden it just disappears, off the TV. And I know I wasn't the only one glued to the TV set and tuned into it. But we got one here for you. It says, question for Bears Baxter. Are the Bigfoot encounters more violent than docile in Alaska?
I would say it's about equally matched. You see a lot of the same sightings here that you do in the lower 48, roadside crossings, or, somebody out hunting and has one, walk by. But you do hear occasionally of the violent encounters. In my opinion, it seems like the violent encounters seem to occur a little bit further up north. I don't know. Maybe it's the cold weather that makes them crankier. But up in like the interior and the villages on the west coast, it seems like they're maybe a little bit more violent over there.
Okay. Now, when we say Alaska, we're picturing snow. So where you live, is there snow up there all the time?
No, it was like 50 degrees today, man. Hold on. I'm going to see if I can move you over here so you can see out my window.
Because, that's what everybody always thinks that.
See, there's my
okay.
green grass and.
Yeah. And see, that's what a lot of people think of when people say Alaska, that it's what they seen on TV, right?
Yeah. So, we don't live in igloos. You know what though? My internet does have to be brought in by dog sled though.
Does it really?
No.
Bo's back. For structures, I'll be looking for footprints, carrying a few makes for deep prints, pine trees or sappy and catch hair. That's some good points, Bo. Yeah, that's.
And I'll tell Bo, I have gotten a magnifying glass and went up and down the tree looking for little hairs caught on the bark. I haven't found any. As far as the footprints go, though, a lot of the areas where I look, where I research, I don't like to use the word researcher, but a lot of the areas I investigate is like a boreal rainforest. So a lot of the ground, it's very soft and spongy, and it's not really, like you can step there and it's going to kind of bounce back. It's not like mud or dirt or, topsoil where it's going to leave an impression. A lot of times it's pretty soft and spongy. And like I said, I'm a big guy. I'm a pretty big guy. I can run across some of those areas, and I won't even make a sound, not even a thump. It's very soft ground, very spongy.
And I'm glad you said that, because it's letting people know it's different from what they see on TV, the shows,
Yeah.
when they go up there and film and try to locate and stuff like that. And I'm glad that you set the background like you did by showing us your backyard and the green grass and explaining about the sponginess and everything else. And Jim, yep, the Giants, and then the last one says thanks. So you answered some of their questions. So what do you encounter when you go out and investigate?
You know, sometimes nothing happens. Sometimes you go out to an area that there's been a history of sightings and activity, and nothing happened. And that's not something they really show you on TV. Same thing with like the cops. Like TV shows. They'll show you 30 minutes of activity. They're going to this call, they're going to that call, and it's like hopping. They're like, oh man, it's busy. But what they don't show you is the cops sitting around the station going, man, I wish something would happen.
Right. And it could have taken a week to just get that 30 minutes.
Exactly. And I think there's probably a lot of shows out there, both law enforcement related shows and Bigfoot type shows where they do like, okay, there's not really anything going on, so let's make something happen. Let's go pull over some cars until we find some DUIs, or let's do this or let's do that. And let's oh well, I heard a noise. It wasn't a Bigfoot, but there for a few minutes we were wondering what it was. Let's use that. I think there's a lot of that going on. But that being said, I mean, when something does happen, it's awesome. It's amazing. I've heard some really good tree knocks up here, and I'm going to tell you, I was skeptical there for a long time. I was watching the shows on TV, and the guys down in the lower 48 doing their Bigfoot investigations, and they're tree knocks, tree knocks, tree knocks. And I was like, I think tree knocks are a bunch of bunk, because I'd never heard any up here. Well, that changed. I finally I found an area that had a lot of activity, and went out there and heard a lot of knocks. And it's a lot of what a lot of people theorize it would be when something would change. Like somebody comes into the area and there's a knock. Somebody goes to leave and there's a knock. A lot of that. Sometimes I think, we're pretty egotistical, human beings are. And I think that a lot of times the things we do, or we attribute the things that Sasquatch does to us. Like, if there's a vocalization or there's a tree knock or something, it's like, it's because we're here. I think that's a big assumption to make. It might just be their normal everyday activity, and we're anthropomorphizing them and saying, well, they're doing that because I'm here. So that's just a theory I have. I have nothing to substantiate it, but remember my disclaimer earlier when I said I didn't know anything.
Right. And don't get me wrong. I don't think there's any expert out there in the field that can actually say for a fact or scientifically that this is what's causing this and this is why they do it. I've heard people that I interviewed say they seen them do the tree knocks, and they tree knock back and they get a response. I mean, what does a tree knock mean? We don't know. What does the X mean?
Yeah.
Does that mean do not enter, or is that marked territory, or what do you think?
I think the X's are probably territorial markers. Like, again, that's just a theory. I don't know, but that's my theory. The tree knocks is interesting because, personally, I don't think Bigfoot carries around a stick to hit trees with. And I wonder maybe if it's not a sound they make with their mouth, but a friend of mine, Rob Roy Menzies, who owns the Bigfoot Art Gallery in Palmer, Alaska, check it out. He was out at an area we like to investigate, and he heard a tree knock. And he says after he heard the tree knock, he heard debris coming out of the tree. Like he heard, like leaves and stuff falling out of the tree. So now I'm like, well, does that mean they really do hit the trees? Are they hitting it, maybe cupping their hands and hitting the trees, or hitting it with their fists? Or was it a sound made with the animal's mouth, and then that sound he heard was the Bigfoot coming out of the tree? I don't know. I mean, it just, there's never any answers. It's always more questions.
You're right, and it's all these rabbit holes we have. And Bo's back, and Bo says, "Gotcha, been out there to template rainforest out in, I don't know what PNW is.
Pacific Northwest.
Oh, thank you. Very soft and spongy ground. So yes. Another one here. Amazing indeed. I have multiple up close encounters with Bigfoot, Dogman, and other cryptids. And it goes back to, like I said earlier in the show, the scientists will tell us what does and does not exist. But then we have things across the world that's we call monsters that are washing up on beaches, and they don't take the body and to the lab and dissect it. They don't take samples or DNA samples or anything. The first thing they do is dig a hole on the beach and bury it. I mean, there's things that wash up on the beaches. There's things that are caught in fishermen's nets, that are unexplained. People don't know what it is. We know more about Mars and the Earth than we do about our own planet, and that's pretty sad. I don't know about other cryptids. Do you believe in other cryptids?
Well, I'm pretty certain that Bigfoot exists, but I am 100% certain that there are things in the ocean we don't know about.
Right.
I wouldn't bet against that for anything.
Right. Another one. What does? Okay, we already answered that one. Oh no, we haven't. Bo says, "What does Beans think of the claims of groups like NAWAC, who claim that Sasquatch stay persistently in one area versus groups who feel that they are traveled over large ranges like bear?"
Well, I think it's dependent on the area. I think if they can stay in I'm going to say a small area, but understand when I say small, I'm talking in their like their range would probably be, like we could probably live in a 3 or 4 square mile area while they might need, 20. So I'm saying I think they could probably, if there's enough food and resources around, I think they probably wouldn't have any reason to leave. Personally, I don't think that they migrate huge distances. I think if they did, there would probably be, I think there would be a lot more, I think one probably would have got plowed down by a logging truck or something by now. But I think they probably stick pretty close to a central area where the food and resources are. I don't think they really, I mean, this again, my opinion, nothing to base this on. I don't think they really travel that much unless they really have to. I think they might get pushed out by humans coming in and developing an area. They might get pushed out by a forest fire. I personally, I have an area here not too far from where I live that I like to investigate. Went in there, for several years and had a lot of interesting things happen. Had a lot of activity. Large fire came through there a few years ago and burned thousands of acres. And since then, I haven't had anything happen there. So I'm hoping that they moved on and didn't get killed in the fire. But, I think they probably don't move around unless they really have to in search of food or other resources.
It's hard for me to read, guys, because my laptop's so far away. It says tree knocks are warnings for humans. that encroachment towards nesting sites. And that's always been a theory.
Yeah.
I've actually heard that from a lot of researchers or investigators with people that's boots on the ground.
Yeah.
But once again, we're speculating.
Yeah. I mean, I've I've heard tree knocks and gone in the area towards them, and I'm still here. So,
Right.
yeah. So,
Great show tonight with guest Beans. That is, I'm very excited, and I'll be honest, I'm stoked to even have him on the show because I knew what type of show he's going to have, and my prediction turned out correctly. I have prior law enforcement experience, so I can usually tell, from the background of some people, how are they going to act or dictate or respond on the show. And so far, it's perfect.
thank you.
Everybody needs to be like you and be objective, and quit assuming that everything they see is Sasquatch related. That's number one mistake I see. And I always get the question, hey, Grizzly, is this picture or video real? You and I, especially the years underneath your belt, have seen things that we don't see that they see, right? But my answer is number one, I wasn't there, and number two, I didn't take the photograph or video, and that's my response. Because what happens in that shadow, they can see with their own eyes, but the camera didn't pick up. There's all these what ifs, and
100%. I 100% agree with you on that. I wasn't there, so I can give you my opinion, but everybody knows what those are worth.
And right, and same here on the show. But I own three different paranormal sites. One of them's Bigfoot and UFO and so forth, and blah blah blah. And nobody trolls the site, And my rule of thumb is if you post something up and you want to put an emoji on there, don't do it. If you don't agree with what they say, that's fine. Keep it to yourself. Scroll on, because those are the people that comes out and says, "Hey, look, I'm not being ridiculed about the stuff that I'm posting that I think I saw." And and they don't ask the right questions. If you post a photograph, I would put look here or circle something and say, this is what I think I saw. What do you think? Now that's different. You left the door open for, people's opinions and comments and so forth. But, if you're going to be negative and bully people, just scroll on, just move it on. And it was funny because one day last week, I couldn't sleep, and I had a real problem sleeping. And I was thinking about how large our community is on Facebook when it comes to Bigfoot and cryptids, and it's very large. I mean, we're talking, over 100,000 plus people, or not more, and all these different groups out there. And, and I always thought, how come they don't get together and share their evidence and so forth, and share their adventures or expeditions with everybody, and why not do that? And I own many Facebook groups that are not cryptid or Bigfoot related, that are actually challenge coins and so forth. Moderator or admin over 23 other different groups that I don't even touch or own, that I'm helping out with people. And when I got into the the challenge coin community, I started a group for only admins and moderators for every group that was out there. If you was the admin or moderator of a group, then you need to join this group. So when little Johnny acts up in your group and rips somebody's off, didn't fulfill their end of the bargain, we can all share the information between us. It's private. And now little Johnny's going to be kicked off of all the groups and blocked.
It's a good
So
idea.
yeah. So when I thought about that, and I think about people like you, boots on the grounds, the group that I started, it's Share Your Evidence Podcast, EVPs, Footprints, Howls and Growls. And so far it's done pretty well for being, just started. And, I tell people, go out there and share your evidence. Well, I don't want people to know where I live. I don't want my neighbor to know it's me. I don't want my family to be like, oh my God, here he is acting up. Ladies and gentlemen, I know little Johnny is running around in the middle of the night in an ape suit, half drunk, playing jokes on people. We had the fakers out there. It's the truth. And that damages the community and people that play pranks and record and take pictures of their friends in outfits or suits and, up close and record videos that does not have any movement of any type of Sasquatch that you would see. and you can tell it's a human just by the way it's walking. So, like I said, when I started that group, in my groups, I have state police officers, first responders. I have psychics. I have admin or mediums, and there are my go-to people to have on the show and back up people that speak and so forth. And I did this one case, and it affected the computer today. And it's been a couple of weeks ago. Long story short, she was possessed with demons. Now, the first thing people say is, "Oh my God, here we go!" One of these nut jobs. No, I mean this person really had some serious issues, and taking psychology and stuff. It was real hard in the beginning because in the beginning it was diagnose, right? Describe, then prescribe. And we're always giving people medicine and pushing them on their way. What happens if people are seeing things that are paranormal that we don't see? I know we got schizophrenics out there. I know we got people with mental health issues. That's a given in society. But what about that percentage that actually don't have any issues or mental health problems within their family or their family tree, and they're seeing stuff, and we're trying to force, pills down their throat and saying, and putting a label on them. So that was my big problem to overcome in the beginning. And what do you think about, something like that kind of topic?
Like possession?
Just, people that think they see things and, and people just put them in an asylum or a hospital and, and they give them medicine to make them look like robots and everything else.
Yeah. Well, and my experience with most of the mentally ill people I've dealt with, I haven't seen a whole lot of them get thrown away and locked up and with the key thrown away. Most of them get right back out on the streets pretty soon and back to what they were doing. I don't know. I dealt with a lot of mentally ill people when I was working in law enforcement. And I never really, they all seem to have pretty similar. I never really met anybody where I thought, this is different. This isn't like, the other people. There was all seemed to be always like common symptoms, commonalities toward them all. I never met anybody that I stopped and thought, man, maybe there's something else going on with this person. But again, I'm up here in Alaska. I'm dealing with, we don't have a very large population. I'm only dealing with a small segment of the population of the country. So, I'm certainly open to those kind of things. I mean, there's probably, I think the universe is too amazing for, there not to be something going on more
Right.
than what we see. But at the same time, I never ran into anything like that made me think like, okay, this isn't like the other people I've dealt with. There's something like seriously different about this, and there might be something more going on here. But I'm not opposed that, that couldn't happen.
Well, I mean, look at our law enforcement careers. I don't know when you got out. I got out this 2017, I think, and got back into it when I moved to Lexington. But look at the training we had when it comes to autism and people with excited delirium. The training we had with that, and so I mean that opened my eyes a lot in how to treat people with certain disabilities, because the way they act and act different, we just can't come up to you and say, "Hey, come here, we got to go. The house is on fire," or holler or talk very loud around certain people, and some of them you can't look in their eyes, and we're taught that,
Yeah.
and we're taught somewhat how to deal with mental ill patients. And usually the first thing we do is we call back up from EMS and have them show up to deal with it. But we do interact with it, and you're right. But
Yeah.
it's always that what if, I mean, especially when it comes to children, when they're young and stuff, I think and I actually believe that they are seeing things. I
Oh
do.
yeah. Yeah. Those stories creep me out where they're like talking to somebody that's not there or something.
Right.
That's some creepy stuff.
Right. So I'm not saying every kid that does that, actually can see things. I mean, everybody has their imaginary friends growing up, especially if you don't have a lot of people in your area and you imagine play and so forth. But, seeing certain things along the nature, it just makes you wonder, what if, what if? And great show tonight, guys. Let me see here. Somebody messaged me and it blocked it. Get off there. Great show tonight with guest Beans. That's right. I was hoping he's going to knock it out of the ballpark. And to me, he did a triple. So absolutely. But when you're out there, Sasquatching, what evidence do you come across of? Have you found footprints? Have you tried caster or plaster?
I haven't cast any here in Alaska. Like I said, a lot of the areas where I go, it's real soft, spongy ground. I found some curious impressions that have like toes and they don't look like bears. Um,
And
I've
I'm
had,
glad you brought that up, because a lot of people mistake that from bear tracks. I mean, Sasquatch tracks. The bear
yeah,
steps within the same footprint as they
yeah,
walk.
I've found a couple of bear double steps and gotten pretty excited. But if you just, if you take your time, like I said, slow down, take your time, look at it, you can kind of figure it out what it is. I've traveled out, in the wintertime, I've seen some pretty impressive tracks in the snow from a distance. And then, I'm like, oh man, I got to go check that out, get out there. And it's moose tracks. So,
Right.
you got to just keep your eyes down and look. And that's something that I see a lot of, and a lot of other investigations is they'll find something and then maybe they'll just take, they'll take a blurry photo or they'll take one photo. I like to take a lot of different photos from different angles. I like to use oblique lighting. I like to use scale. Of course, I've been guilty of not using scale in my photos. I've done that drives me crazy. Um,
Right.
but yeah, I think that tracks, um, vocalizations. I'm waiting. I don't want to talk too much about it because I'm not sure what's going to happen with it. But I'm waiting to hear on some DNA swabs, some possible DNA swabs that I took of a handprint that was on a building. I'm kind of waiting to find out what's going on with that. That was probably that was earlier this summer, and I haven't heard anything back from the analysis of that. So I'm excited to hear about that.
Yeah, that's awesome. That'd be really good. Absolutely.
Yeah, I did. It was a pretty clear handprint on the side of a building on the site and like metal siding, and I swabbed each finger and the palm, and I've got it sent off. I sent it off to somebody that's pretty well known in the community, and I haven't heard back yet as far as the analysis of it. So, fingers crossed,
Yeah, and that's the truth. And I've actually heard from people on my show that says they sent off evidence, and when it comes to DNA, hair, or whatever they collected, and they wait and wait. They don't hear anything. And they call and like, how much longer it's going to be? I already paid for it. And I know you got it because I have a tracking label said it was delivered. But they turn around and say, "Well, we didn't receive anything." It's like, oh, it's those people. Is it coincidental? That it disappears. Smithsonian is supposed to own many skeletons and so forth. That they say they don't have in their books or their list of possession.
Yeah. Well, what's the say? If it happens once, it's happenstance. If it happens twice, it's a coincidence. If it happens 3 times, it's enemy action.
There you go.
Yeah.
There you go. I mean, that's the truth. But that group that I made, I sent you the link of it, and I've seen people with some astonishing photographs of Sasquatch. I'm talking like out of a National Geographic, and I asked them, "Why don't you share that?" And and why don't you put that out there?
And they say, "Well, Chris, I don't want people to drive up and down my road. I don't want campers to camp out back. And I sure the hell don't want hunters hunting in my woods."
So, and that makes sense, but, that's why I made the group. There's a little button you can slide, and it says post anonymously, and that way that all you have to do is put it up there and hit that button, and you don't even have to know who put it out there. And that's one of the reasons why I created that group, so you can see these photographs that I've seen, that you can see the videos that I've seen, and it's like they got good evidence, and some of the groups do have good evidence that, people has taken and, share that stuff, just because when I first started out in the podcast and everything, I'll never forget it. The program I use, I'm on 8 platforms now, 50 plus Facebook groups. Thank you all the admins and moderators for letting me air the podcast in your group. But then you have some people are like, well, to watch the video, it's sending it back to your group to have them watch it. Well, I didn't know that program did that. And a lot of people are like, well, you're stealing my members. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm not trying to steal any members. It's a community. We're trying to share the knowledge, right?
Yeah.
And that's one thing that we're here for. What you do up there in Alaska, somebody may pick up and try down in Florida, or like Bo said, another area. they had the same terrain. So absolutely. I mean, what do you think?
Yeah, unless I'm out with somebody else and they are like, don't tell anybody about this or don't do that. I'm open book, man. I like to share everything. I mean, that's what it's all about, is getting information out there so we all have the same goal. Some of us go about it different ways and some of us have different theories on it, but I think for the most part, we all have the same goal, that we want to either prove it either to ourselves or to everybody else. I'm kind of in it for selfish reasons. I just want to know for myself 100% that they exist. But if I got that proof, I would certainly share it with everybody.
Well, like I said, I sent the link to you, and hopefully if you have any recordings or any evidence that you have collected and you want to share, you could share it either with your name and information, that's attached to it, like a regular post, or you can post it to where nobody knows who you are or where you're at. And I've seen some more people that I spoke to that has released evidence in their collection because they can do it and their family doesn't know about it. The next door neighbor don't know that picture was, in the woods out back. So I think it really helps people. What do you think?
Yeah, I agree. It always perplexes me when people say they have something and they don't share it. It either makes me think that, I mean, they really value the privacy, or they're hiding something they don't, or it's maybe not as good as they say it is.
Yeah, and we always see the squab blobs or blob squabs on pictures and stuff, but once again, I wasn't there. I didn't take the video or picture, so there's nothing I can say on that.
Yeah,
But
a tip for the people that take the blobscotch pictures: take a picture when the blob is gone too. So,
yeah, that makes good sense. Ghost hunters do it all the time. They capture something, they took a picture, take another picture back to back, and it's either there or not there. But ladies and gentlemen, it's that time once again this evening. Thank you for joining our show. And Mr. Baxter has knocked this one out of the ballpark. I don't think our conversation is nowhere near done. So I would like to have you back on the show to discuss further topics with Bigfoot and some theories and so forth. I extend that invitation out to you. But if you want to be on my show, all you have to do is email me at grizzlytheparanormal@gmail.com. That's grizzlytheparanormal@gmail.com. From Lexington, Kentucky, from coast to coast, all around the world, I say thank you for tuning in. And Mr. Baxter, it's been a pleasure to have you on the show tonight.
thank you for having me.
And like I said, let's get together in the next couple of weeks and see when you're available. And I really like to have you back on. I really do.
Awesome.
And
sounds great.
And the link I sent you, hopefully you use it.
Yeah, I think I joined. I'm pretty sure I did.
Okay. But ladies and gentlemen, join the group, share your evidence. Don't be afraid or scared. That's what it's made for. But until next time, I'll be live in the next 10 minutes. So if you want to stand by and watch another live podcast with Grizzly, it's coming. But until then, ladies and gentlemen, good night.